Now I yield myself 5 minutes for my opening statement. Once again, welcome to our witnesses. I want to apologize this morning to everyone here. We tried to find a tax expert named Michael Cohen, thinking it would generate more attention. We were unable to do so. But again, we have an esteemed panel. We are here today to talk about the impact of the 2017 tax law on the federal budget and American families. It's a conversation my Democratic colleagues and I tried to have with our Republican counterparts more than a year ago. But instead of collaborating on bipartisan, middle-class focused tax reform, and instead of heeding the warnings of economists, the Congressional Budget Office, and even our own constituents, congressional Republicans chose to enact massive tax cuts for the wealthy and large corporations, which we will discuss today. They did this on their own, behind closed doors in the dead of night, and without time for debate or any public scrutiny, and I exclude all my Republican colleagues here. I don't think anyone here was involved in that process, though most who were here did vote for it. That bill was enacted in such a hurry that senators were forced to read handwritten changes in the margins of the bill text if they had time to read it at all. That's one of the reasons why there have been about requests for more than 70 corrections to the tax bill coming from Senate Republicans, at least. This tax law was based on the flawed notion of trickle-down economics, which has totally been discredited. The idea that tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and for corporations will trickle down and raise the standard of living and incomes for everyone else. We know that hasn't happened. Under the Republican tax law, nearly all the tax cuts are going to the top 1% and corporations. The richest 1% alone are receiving more than 80% of the total benefits. Our long-term economic growth trajectory has not improved. The federal deficit is soaring as corporate tax receipts plummet. There is no sign of an investment boom. Wage growth for workers remains weak and woefully inadequate. Most small business owners have seen few, if any, benefits. Because of changes in this law, factories and jobs are more likely to go overseas. There are even more special interest tax loopholes for the wealthy than before. And that promise of being able to do your taxes on a postcard, well, we're still waiting for that one. Since the president signed this bill into law, we've seen a record-setting $1 trillion in stock buybacks that make rich investors richer and fuel rising CEO pay. And by the way, about a third of the benefits of those stock buybacks go to foreign investors. They do almost nothing to improve business operations or help the average worker. They have not improved our economic outlook, and as our witnesses believe, will ultimately worsen income and wealth inequality. And due to perverse international tax incentives in the law, it's possible for companies to actually reduce their taxes significantly more or avoid paying tax altogether by generating income overseas and moving investments abroad. This endangers more than 15 million American workers whose jobs are vulnerable to being offshored. For American families, this law is a huge and predictable failure. For the federal budget, it's a huge and predictable drain. And that's because the premise on which this tax legislation was built, that it would magically pay for itself, is fundamentally flawed. As we will hear today, the GOP tax law has significantly weakened our budgetary health. It has caused more than a 30% drop in corporate receipts in 2018, with total receipts as a share of GDP falling to the lowest levels since the end of the Great Recession. This is despite healthy economic growth and a tight labor market. As we engage in our oversight function, today we will not only discuss what the impact of the tax cuts have had on the budget, but how they will impact the economy and American families going forward. Our budgetary challenges, and we have many, require smart, fiscally responsible policies, and the American people are demanding it. Today, we are going to find out just how deep the damage goes. We will look at the facts about the tax law's impact on American families, and we will set the stage for taking necessary action to move our nation's fiscal policies in the right direction. I thank our witnesses for helping us with this discussion, and I look forward to hearing from you. I now yield 5 minutes to the ranking member, Mr. Wong.